Blu Tack, now in discreet grey. The best way I can describe it is like a pliable, reusable putty. And I'm going to show you many reasons why you need it in your workshop too. But first, let's get the obvious one out of the way. It's usually introduced to school kids to put their artwork up, or signs and posters. And say if you hung a picture with one nail and you keep knocking it, you can put some along the bottom of the back to keep it straight. You can use it to keep certain accessories near specific tools, like a chuck key on a drill press, or make some of your most used drill bits accessible. The same of course applies to screws, unless you've got a wrist magnet. No pencil pot? No problem. If you don't have a magnetic drill bit, then sometimes I'll add it at the back and pop it in. But I do recommend you take this out immediately after, just in case it's hard to get out if you've left it for months on end. And that's speaking from experience. Keep dropping screws? I've got another fix. If you make the wrong measurement on your project, which I often do, instead of crossing it out and getting confused later, I'll sometimes use it as an eraser. Now, say if you're using a cabinet scraper and it's got very sharp edges, you can pop it around the corners to prevent stabbing yourself. At least my shavings are getting a bit better. I'd say my absolute favourite hack though is when I'm using a flush trim router bit. I like to Blu Tack the good copy to the one I'm going to match it to, then clamp them to my sawhorses, and when I have to move the clamps as I go because I don't have a router table, I know the Blu Tack is keeping it in place and I don't accidentally knock it out of alignment. Now, you could use double-sided sticky tape for that, but I prefer this method because it's less likely to leave a residue behind. Now, going back to another project, I couldn't work without it while I did my tiled splashback, and I temporarily Blu Tacked 3 tiles to the wall so I could work out where to cut my tile trim, and then I could carry on. If you want to sand a piece and you don't have any clamps and you're even struggling with an anti-slip mat, place a few along the bottom, press it down, and it's very hard to move. And while we're here, you can use them to prop up a piece so you can paint the edges properly without also touching a surface. Now, come on, let's be honest, it makes a great stress ball. If you're measuring something on your own and you're having trouble with it collapsing on you, then you can add a tiny bit on the end just to clamp it.
It's not even falling.
Now, another hack you can do, but please do it with caution, is to use a lot of Blu Tack to clamp a piece of wood down and gently use a router. I don't recommend routing too close to your worktop or pushing too heavy on it, but at least your hands are away from the router bit. I had to use it the other week to Blu Tack some dividers. I could have glued them to stop my drill bits from mixing up, but I didn't want to use something like glue that would be more permanent in case I changed my system later. I've also had to use them to Blu Tack coins to create a clearance when fitting a built-in wardrobe next to some architrave. Or you could Blu Tack coins on top of a door while you're hanging them. You can use it to hide spare keys, and obviously keep those to yourself. Add some to things you're worried about knocking things off a shelf or ornaments. And it might be obvious to some, but Blu Tack is good at removing old Blu Tack. A lot of people use it to clean things like removing sawdust from crevices for a better paint job. When I put this bandsaw together the other week, I had an absolute nightmare with this handle trying to screw it in place from upside down. I got sick of dropping the washer, so I Blu Tacked it there while I got it in. I might be paranoid, but I do like to cover the webcam on my laptop. And you can easily remove it for a Zoom call. I also found it really useful to Blu Tack pieces of wood together to get a future measurement, just like I did on my DIY filing boxes. I had some rebated offcuts and I needed to work out the width for the suspension files to go on top. Another one is keeping cables out of the way. And when I'm painting projects, one of the tips many of you have told me is to store it in a washing up bowl so you don't accidentally knock it over. If you don't have that, then you could Blu Tack the bottom of it instead to keep it more secure. Clean sawdust from ports. That's a bit loud. Blends in nicely. That's a bit better. If you don't have a spare pair of eyes with you and you want to check to see if something lightweight is level, then put it in place, step back, and keep going back and forth to make any adjustments. This, by the way, is going to be a future Carpenter's daughter logo on my wall. When I'm doing DIY, I also like to get different action shots so it's less boring. And a GoPro Blu Tacked to a wall, okay, a fake GoPro, is very useful for that. You can use it to keep awkward things steady, like dowel in a mitre box or little annoying pieces. And occasionally you'll find I have to use a sewing machine, like when I did a lap desk. But if you don't have a pincushion handy, you can Blu Tack some to your machine. I also often work with leather needles as well as regular ones, but the problem is I'm very good at getting them mixed up. So another tip that I've learned recently is pop some white Blu Tack on the side, it's a better colour match, and you can pop it straight back in the packet. Or unlike me, if you've got a sewing machine that's darker, you might prefer to use grey Blu Tack or just on any darker surface in general. Do you have a Blu Tack hack I've not mentioned?